Be'ezras Hashem, today's daf is daf Kuf Tes Vav. And hi, Lewis. We are beginning from Kuf Tes, Kuf Yudalit Amid Beis. Okay. So we're going to start from the Mishnah. The Mishnah is discussing about when you buy things on the street. The question is, if you buy something on the street, how do you know if it's stolen? Well, if it's stolen, and then the guy that had his goods stolen, you paid full price for it, do you have to give it back to him and for free, and then you lose out? So there's something called takonas ashuk, takana of the marketplace. In other words, they made a rule, Chazal made a rule that if you buy something in the market and it turns out it was stolen goods, and you don't have to, if the guy wants his item back, he has to pay you full price for it, okay? And then let him deal with the ganef. But you, as a purchaser, don't have to take the loss. And that's very good, because imagine every time you buy something on the street, if you have to be concerned that maybe it's stolen items, and the one that it was stolen from, you're going to have to give it to him back for free, and you're going to lose out. And so nobody will buy anything. So listen to the case in the Mishnah. Hamakir kelav usfarav biad acher. A guy goes into somebody's house and he recognizes his vessels, his books. It's in somebody else's house. And he says, that's stolen, that was mine. And the guy says, no, I bought it on the street. And a news flash came out in the city that items like this were stolen from him, right? From the person who claims it was stolen from. So therefore he wants it back. So the purchaser doesn't give it to him for free, but rather, the purchaser of the item says, I swear how much Kamma, how much he paid for it. And then he takes the money back from the nignav, from the guy that got the item stolen from. He buys it basically back from him. And now the nignav has to go to the ganef and say, listen, you stole it from me, and I had to buy it back from somebody else. You owe me this money. So it's not the purchaser that loses out, although he has to sell the item back to the nignav, but he could force him to sell. He can't even say, I don't want to sell it, because it's stolen items. And we have proof that it was stolen, because a news flash came out that items like this were stolen. V'im lav, like if he did not have that news flash coming out that items were stolen from him, so lav kol menu. Nobody will believe you if you go into somebody else's house and say, hey, that's mine. That painting is mine. It was stolen from me. Because I will say, it was your painting, or whatever it was, but you sold it to somebody else. And this one purchased it from that person. So therefore, you're not believing, he doesn't have to give it back to you. Says the Gemara, even if you have a news item that this guy claims in the newspapers, it says that some things were stolen from him. So what? Leichish dilma zabninhu. Maybe let us concern ourselves that the items that he claims that were stolen were actually sold. And he was the one that made a whole, he really regrets selling it. So whatever, he makes a news item, a false, fake news that the items were stolen from him. He puts in the paper fake news that items were stolen from him in order for have an excuse to buy it back. Rav Yehuda Marav, it can't be fake news, because we know people came to his house, and they got up, and middle of the night they said, Nignavu he said, Nignavu Kelai. He got up in the middle of the night. You see, I brought people into my house, and now my kelim are stolen. So the Gemara says that's still not a good enough to disprove that it's fake news. Koshkein Ilamatza, he found a good alibi to come out with this fake news. Really, these guys didn't steal anything. He just, invited guys so that he can claim, oh, I had a Geneva in my house. So the Gemara says, Rav Kahana Messiah Mishmei de Rav. Rav didn't finish his teretz, so Rav Kahana finished what he meant to say. It's not just he's spreading news that items were stolen from him. He's saying, we see a tunnel coming out of his house. And the people that slept over in his house, Yatsu, they left his house. And they have these bundles of in a bag on their shoulders. The Hakol Yomer, and everybody is saying, Nignavu Kalim Shaplaini, this Kalim belonging to so and so was stolen. So it's more than just a news item, but actually the witness is seeing people leaving through a tunnel from his house with Kalim on their back. So the Gemara says, but if the Kalim are like wrapped in a bag, the Dilma Kalim Hava, Sram Lai Hava, maybe it was just Kalim they stole and books they didn't steal. And the Mishnah says, if you recognize books, how do you know they stole books? They're saying that there was books that was also stolen. People say that were books stolen. So the Gemara says, okay, I believe books were stolen, but maybe they stole small books, and he's claiming big books were stolen from him. He said this book was stolen. It was that the news item that came out is very specific, that this item was stolen from him. Maybe they were old books, and he's claiming these new books were stolen from me. Amarav, going to Amri, halol kelev shalplaini, halol svar shalplaini. That the news item said exactly that a big geneva happened by this person. People were coming out of a tunnel, and they were carrying his kalim and carrying these specific books. So we know that these items were stolen from him. Now that he walks into somebody else's house and sees them there, he knows that guy bought it from the Ganav. He can claim that they're mine. I want them back. And he pays the guy who purchased it and then takes his books back. So the Gemara just wants to know a question. Wait a second. When a Ganav enters into a tunnel, right, the owner of the house has a right to shoot to kill the Ganav, right? And therefore, if the Ganav escapes from the house without being killed, he actually gets to keep the items he stole because he risked his life. And when you risk your life, so it's almost like kum leib de rabban leib. We've seen that before. So you actually keep the items. So if the Ganav did such a thing, then the items belong to the Ganav. So when he sold it to somebody who bought to the purchaser, it really is the items belonging to the Ganav, not from the victim who the Ganav came from. Umi Amarav Hachi, Rav said, Baba Machteres, if somebody digs a tunnel through somebody's house, Vinotal Kalim, and stole Kalim, Vyatza, and he escaped, Potter, he keeps the items. Why? My tama bidamei kanani. He acquired it with his blood. He risked his life. He could have been shot as a Ganav. Because a Raidif is a Ganav that comes through a tunnel, the victim has a right to kill. So the Gemara says, how do you mean that was only said the Kanani Babam Maktaris, the Mikara Mosanafshik Tori, that the guy entered the house through the tunnel. So when he originally came to steal, he was risking his life. He was risking his life to be killed. Alhani, these Ganovim, they were invited to sleep over. It says Shalom, they slept over. Since they're not risking their lives to be killed, the items that they stole don't belong to the Ganav. They still belong to the original victim. Now, Amar Rava said that we said that you have to have a specific news item that came out in the newspapers, that items were stolen from such and so, and these were the items that were stolen. That was only said, this is the type of owner that whatever is in his house, he could sell. It is up for sale. He's a wheeler dealer. So, so we don't trust him. We don't trust him if he says, oh, these items were stolen. We have to have a news item and proof and circumstantial evidence that people are saying the items were indeed stolen from him. If you're dealing with a regular homeowner that never sells whatever he purchases, a guy who has things in his house, we go to Vava. He doesn't have to find a whole news item story that items were stolen. He's a guy that never sells anything. So if he goes into somebody else's house and says, oh, that item was in my house, he doesn't have to prove that items were stolen from him because he's a guy that never sells things. So, Frag the Gemara, what do you mean there's a guy that never sells items from his house? Everybody sells items from the house. Vidilma, maybe it so happened this guy needed quick money and he sold it on eBay or whatever. everybody can sells item of their house. Depends on the circumstance, and maybe he had a situation where he needed to sell the items. Rav Ashi says, true. If just a news item that he had a thievery in his house, that would be enough. He doesn't have to have it so specific. If he's such a own homeowner that rarely sells everything, rarely sells anything, so therefore, along with a little blurb that's just an overall statement that said that this guy suffered a robbery, that would be enough. It doesn't even if it's not specific. That's enough that we would believe him to say, oh, such and such an item was stolen from me, and he can go over to the purchaser's house and says, these items are stolen from me, I want them back. Utmar, we learned a teaching. Gonav umochav achakach hukar aganav. A guy stole something and then sold it, right? So you have a ganav stealing something and sold it on the black market. And the purchaser now bought it. V'achakach hukar aganav. Now everybody knows who the ganav was. It's in the paper who you stole it from, the ganav. So when the victim wants his stuff back, Rav Mishmeid Rab Chia Omar Hadin Imarishan. He has to go to the ganav to get his stuff back. Obviously, the ganav doesn't have anything, so the ganav will pay him. But when he goes to the purchaser, he has to actually pay for the item, and he has to rebuy the item from the purchaser from the ganav, and then take the ganav to court. Rabbi Yochanan Mishmeid Rabbi Yani Amar, no, Hadin Imasheni, that he could actually go into the purchaser's house. Since now that we know the ganav, he could go into the purchaser's house, take the item off the shelf of the purchaser without paying for it, and let the purchaser, who now knows that the ganav was a ganav, who we bought it from was a ganav, take him to court. Let the purchaser deal with all the legal tape, taking people to court. So again, Rav says that the victim deals with the ganav and not with the purchaser. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, he can go to the purchaser and take the item back and let the purchaser retrieve his loss from the ganav. Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef explained, Loi pligi, they're not arguing. Kan lifnei yish, hadim im hasheni. If it's before yish, let's say he never gave up hope. So when the purchaser got it, really the item always belonged with the ganav. So therefore, hadim im hasheni. Then the victim could go to the purchaser and just take the item, because it's my item. I never gave up hope, and there's no yish and shina rishus over here. So therefore, let the purchaser now get his money back from the ganav. Kan la'acha yish, but after yish hadin imarishan. Then after yish, so after he giving up hope, so let's say he gave up hope, then the purchaser purchased the item. So therefore, it really now belong 100% to the purchaser. So you can't just take it from the purchaser. You have to pay for it. The victim has to pay for it. And then when he wants his money back, he has to go to the ganav. And that's what Rabbi Rav was talking about. Hadim and Rishon and Rabbi Yochanan was talking about Lifnei Yish and Hadim and Mesheni. So Rav and Rabbi Yochanan are not arguing. The Tervai, Islay, Rav Chizda, they all hold Rav Chizda's teaching that once you have Yish and Shinu Rishus, then the item belongs to the purchaser. So normally a guy who steals something and in his the ganav, while he's holding on to it, the victim gave up hope, and now the ganav sells it to somebody else. It really now totally belongs to the purchaser. Amalei Abaya said v'loy pligi. Does not Rav argue? Even in a certain case, Rav would still agree that lifnei yish, the din is still with the rishon. And then he goes and brings Abaya says like this: the following case of the gifts belonging to a kohen is something that there's no giving up hope. The kohen always wants it back. Upligi. Here's the case. We learned in the Mishnah, a guy goes to a butcher and he's selling him the insides of an animal and the intestines of an animal with the stomach. Now the stomach really is a gift that's supposed to be given to the kohen. A guy says to a butcher, sell me the insides belonging to the cow. And the guy sold it to him, but inside he sold him what was not belonging to the butcher. He sold along with that the stomach of the cow, which really belongs to the kohen. So now the purchaser, he has to give the stomach away to the kohen, and he can't deduct from the price that he purchased it because he purchased the whole insides of the cow, and it's understood that what he paid for was the other parts that he could use, and that the buyer, was going to give the gift to the kohen. But let's say he bought it and paid weight for it. He bought, let's say he said, give me 10 pounds of the insides of the animal. And he didn't mean to buy the stomach of the animal. So he gives, if he finds the stomach, he gives that to the kohen, and then he deducts what he owes to the butcher because he shouldn't be having to pay for something for the stomach that he has to anyway give to the kohen. So he can go back and ask for a discount on what he owes to the butcher. Rav taught, now, just to understand who's who over here. The kohen is the one that the item was stolen from. He's the guy that's missing the stomach that really he should receive. The butcher is the ganav. The purchaser is the purchaser from the ganav. When did we say that you can deduct from the butcher and the kohen goes directly to the purchaser only if the purchaser did the weighing? If the tabach, who is the ganav, did the weighing, hadin im tabach, then the kohen goes to the butcher and to get his keva. He only deals with the rishon. Now, again, it's lifnei yish, right? And he can only go to the butcher, and he can't go to the purchaser. But why? It's lifnei yish, so he should be allowed to either the kohen should be able to take up his case with the butcher or with the purchaser, because the kohen never gave up hope of getting his stomach, which belongs to him as the gift to the kohen. Ema, we have to say, you correct what Rav said. Af dinim atabach. Certainly, you could go to the purchaser, to the buyer of the meat, but you could be able to also go to the ganav, to the butcher, who is the ganav. Because the same I would have thought. The fact is that you can't steal gifts of the kohen, because it doesn't really belong to the kohen; it belongs from Hashem. So the butcher didn't steal anything. So why are you dealing with the butcher? Kamash malam, that you could also take your case up with the butcher. Okay, so now ulabaya the pligi b'may pligi, Abaya, who said that Rav even lifnei yish will not allow you to take up your case with the purchaser, but you could only take up your case with the ganav. What is the argument of Rav? But the Rav Chizda, that do you hold Rav Chizda? Rabbi Yochanan holds of Rav Chizda. Gezel yish and shina rishus is kaina to the purchaser, and Rav holds the purchaser never is kaina it, and therefore the adin is in Marisha. That he holds that the purchaser, it belongs to the purchaser, and you could only take it up with the ganav. Just the opposite. He doesn't hold of Rav Chizda. Rav Zvid Omar Rav Zvid said, that's the difference between Rav Yochanan and Rav is the following. That what? That the yish happened when the purchaser bought it. The guy stole the item. Okay, let's say he stole the book, and now there was no yish there. The guy sold the book, and the purchaser, while it was in the possession of the purchaser, that's when the owner of the book gave up hope. Oh, so it happened usually they're not in typical order. First is yish, and then shini rishus. So ubaha pligi. So who really does the purchaser now own the book? So Marsov, Rabbi Yochanan holds yish v'achar kach shini rishus. If you go in that order, yish first and then shini rishus, kani, then the purchaser acquires the item that was stolen. But if it's shini rishus, first he purchased the item, v'achar kach yish, and then there's yish, like kani, doesn't acquire the item, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan says you could just pull it out of the purchaser. Umar Sov, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Avsov, there's no difference. The purchaser always now owns the book, and therefore, if you want to take it from the purchaser, you have to pay for it. The victim can only deal now in getting a deal now with the original ganav. Rapapa Amar, Rapapa says, "Beglimi the kuliyama like delay pigi by a glima, by an item of clothing." Nobody argues. If there's an item of clothing here, right? So and it's purchased, and the guy purchased an item of clothing that was stolen, everybody agrees to Hodalamari that the purchaser has to take whatever he bought, let's say a sweater, a suit, or something like that, and it was on the black market, he has to return it to its original owner. But the question is, does the victim have to pay for the item? Does the victim who had his clothing stolen from, does he have to now pay the purchaser? That is the machlokes. Rav Mishmeid Rab Chia Ama Hadin Imarishan, because Dina the din is with the ganef. Only if you take from the ganef, Dina de lekeach the lishka zuzu meganef, that the lekeach takes the money from the ganef. The purchaser deals with the ganef. V'loy also by tekanas hashuk. They didn't make at tekanas hashuk over here. So therefore, the din emarishan means not a little bit different than what we thought till now. It means that the guy just takes back his suit, no payment. What about the purchaser? The din is that the lekeach goes to the ganef and says, I bought something from you and I had to give it away for free. So there's no takanas hashuk. Rabbi Yochanan Shem Rabbi Yana din masheni. Dina de lekeach the lishka mi bal habayis. The lekeach takes the money from the bal habayis because of the asabai takanas hashuk. And therefore, the owner that got his suit stolen from, he has to now go deal with the ganef. So now the Gemara asks the story. Does Rav hold that item, a guy who bought things on the black market, and we know now who the ganef is, the victim can just take it away from the purchaser? Is that true? V'arav Huna Talmidid the Rav. Huna was a student of Rav. Okay? The Chonim Bisha Ganav Glima V'zabe. And this person, Chonav, the evil one, stole a suit from somebody and sold it. So you have this Chonim Bisha, he sold a suit, and Rav Huna is the judge. Also the Kamida, Rav Huna, they came to Rav Huna. Amalei Lahu Gavra, so he told this person, Zil Shrei Avitach, go pay for the item that was stolen from. You want your suit back, go pay the purchaser the amount that he paid for that suit, that he bought it off Chonim Bisha, and that's it. And if you want, you could go back to Chonim Bisha and get your money back. But so we see from here that you know who the ganef is, and yet Rav says they didn't make tekanas hashuk. That they made tekanas hashuk. In other words, that the guy has to pay for it. He can't just take it away from the purchaser. So how does that work? And says the Gemara, Shan and Chonim and Bisha, the Gemara says, Chonim and Bisha is a different type of ganef. Kivin the lekel shtulumimei Deloy hukar damim. Since it's very hard to get money from Chonim Bisha, it's almost as if we don't know who the ganef was. Oh, if we don't know who the ganef was, it's almost like our Mishnah, that when you want your item back, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. You can't just walk off and take it from the purchaser without paying for it. Amar Rava said, Im ganef mufursimhu lo asu by tekanas hashuk. Again, tekanas hashuk is the provision ensuring the integrity of the marketplace, that people buy things, and that you buy things, you're not going to have to give it up without somebody giving you money for it. But Rav says if it's a famous ganef, lo asu by tekanas hashuk. A guy bought something off, let's say, John Gotti, right? Everybody knows he's a ganef. So then, when you go to that purchaser and say that's my item, you don't have to pay him back because everybody knows he is a ganef, and you shouldn't be dealing with him. Says the Gemara, but Chonim Bisha was a famous ganef, and yet we made the victim have to pay the purchaser from Chonim Bisha. Why is that? Isn't Chonim Bisha a famous ganef? And says the Gemara, he was an evil person, but Naganef he was not so famous for. He was known as an evil person. He was not so known to be somebody who is a ganef, and therefore they made tekanas hashuk. New Gemara Itmar. We're going to learn a teaching. Ganav upara chayve, ganav upara behakefa. Guy stole something, and then he paid his debt off, and he paid his creditors. Guy stole an item and paid his creditors. So the victim who got his item stolen from, he can go to those lenders and the creditors and take it without paying for it. That's not tekanas hashuk. because that's not a marketplace. The amre layadati dahani obviously mide. It's not because of to get these items that you lent them the money. You lent them money and provided credit without any commitment, and therefore the guy gave you something stolen as payment. The victim could come take it back. Mashkina shava masa and b'masa and asubay tekana shuk. A mashkin that's worth 200 for a loan for 100, then they made tekana shuk, because it's only because he gave you this mashkin, that's why you made the loan. Because usually you give a loan when you have a mashkin that's more than the loan itself. Shava b'shava, but if he gave you a loan that's equal to the mashkin that you got and it's stolen items, then they did do tekana shuk. Okay, Zavina Shava B'Shava, also by Takana Shashuk. If you sold something, if you bartered something equal, there's Takana Shashuk. Shava Mea B'Masan, if you're selling something that's 100, if you're selling, you're only getting 100 of stolen goods, and you're selling something that's worth 200, right? So Rav Sheshes Amalai about Takana Shashuk. Rav Amma also by Takana Shashuk. Sheshes said that maybe you're giving guys gifts, and therefore you would have given a gift anyway, so there's no takanas shuk, and the guy could retrieve his stolen items. The hilchot said the halacha is, and here's what you should remember: Bekuli in all these cases, oisa by takanas shuk. That when this takanas shuk means that, again, takanas shuk, you got to remember this. That takanas shuk means that when somebody is in possession of stolen items, that he bought it in the mall, he bought it in the marketplace. When the victim wants his items back, he has to pay the purchaser for it, and he takes up his case with the ganef if he finds out who the ganef was. If the guy who is in possession of the stolen items was not a purchaser in the marketplace, but he lent the ganef money or he provided credit for the ganef, and the ganef gave him this, then he has to give up the stolen items for free to the victim. Okay, we'll stop right over here and we'll see what we can do, make up the price tomorrow.
Thank you. Shkayach. Thank you so much.
So the Gemara continues. Avimi bar Nazi chamud Ravina have a masik bahu gavra bazazi. Avimi bar Nazi, who's the father-in-law of Ravina, he lent somebody 4 zuzi. Somebody owed him 4 zuz. Ganav galimi, so the borrower stole a suit, asin, and then gave it in return. He stole a suit that was worth 8 zuzim and gave it to the lender, which is avimi. So he lent them another 4 zuz. You gave me a garment worth 8 zuz. I'm lending you another 4 zuz. Then we know that it was stolen items. Also the Kamma Ravina, and they came to Ravina. And the victim wanted his suit back. He said, Kamoy, the first, so Ravina said, Kamoy, the first 4 zuz, Gano Paro B'chayvai, he stole it and paying with his chayv. He didn't have to give you, the victim doesn't have to give you anything for the half a suit, because the guy that gave it to you was actually paying up a debt that you loaned him without knowing that you're getting this suit. So therefore, when he wants his half a suit back, you have to give it to him he doesn't have to pay you for that. But the other 4 zuz, the guy has to pay you the zuz and then take his other half of the suit back, because you lent them that money based on having this suit that he gave you. So you lent him the second 4 zuz based on the glimi that he gave you, this suit that he gave you. Askler of Goyim, bedilma glimi bahazuz kamoya v'ne'elei, gonna for par b'chayve, gonna for par b'kefe. Bavo b'usrois basrai, hemne mehemne, ke'echede hemne mikore. Maybe the second loan of 4 zuz, the guy believed him. He would have loaned him even if he didn't have the suit. And the first was just the first suit. It was the return of paying back a debt or paying back a creditor. But the next loan is not because you're still holding on to a suit. It's just because you now trusted the guy. You see, he pays you back. The halacha is like Rav Kohen, and therefore, the victim doesn't have to get his suit back. He doesn't have to pay you any money. You could pull the whole suit back, and now you're stuck because you loaned the guy 8 zuz and you didn't get paid back. One more piece. Nashah Ganav Sifra. Nashah stole a book. Zabnei le Papinoi. Nashah the Ganav sold it to Papinoi. Bitim Nazuze, he sold it for 80 zuz. Also Papinoi. And the Papinoi resold it to the Mechoizer people, to purchaser number 2 for 120. So Nashar the Ganav sold it Papinoi for 80, and Papinoi sold it Bar Mechoizer for 120. So for Ganav. Now we know who the Ganav was. Nashar. Amar Abaya, Leza Mar de Sifri, the owner of the books, the victim, says V'yavel Bar Mechazoi Taman. He should give 80 zuz to Bar Mechazoi because that was the original sale. V'shakal say when take his book back. Also Bar Mechazoi who paid 120. V'shakal Abon they should take the 40 from Papinoi because we don't look at them being purchaser number 2 and that you have to pay the full price what purchaser number 2 said. Kanash Shuk was only for the first guy, and therefore whatever the first guy paid, that's what the victim is going to pay, and the purchaser number 2 will have to make up his loss from the purchaser number 1. Ask if Rava asked, if someone buys from the Ganef, we make Takanas Shuk. So if a guy bought from somebody who bought from a Ganef, certainly it should be Takanas Shuk. Ela Marava, the victim, really, he should give them 120 and take his books back. And then the owner of the book should now take he should take 40 now back from Papinoi, and then recoup the 80 from Nashor, the original Ghana. But again, by going to purchaser number 2, you have to pay purchaser number 2 the full price he paid for those books. Okay, we'll stop right over here.